And welcome back to Frontier Regional's live coverage of the elections of 2012. We have a hashtag on Twitter, hashtag FRS Elections2012. You can find us on Facebook at Frontier Community Television. And at the Frontier Regional School website, you can find all sorts of materials related to this broadcast. All right, with us right now, our final interview with Mr. Stan Rosenberg, who is a state senator for our district. Mr. Rosenberg.
Yes.
What do you think is the most important issue that's happening in this campaign right now?
Getting the final votes in and getting the people to the polls, because it's almost over.
Wow. Yes, there is about 20 minutes. If you're really waiting to vote at this point, you might cut it a little close.
But get down there. There's still time. There's still 23 minutes left.
But as far as things that are happening that both Obama and Romney and other candidates have been addressing, also with the national senator election in this district, there's been a lot of focus on the economy. Do you think that's the real main issue in right now in politics in general? Or?
I think overall it's about the economy and jobs and creating economic development and dealing with the fact that the wealthiest top 1% is getting wealthier and wealthier and wealthier, and the middle class, which is most of us, our income is stagnating, our purchasing power is compromised, the ability to maintain mortgages, send your kids to college, all of those things are being compromised because of the economic inequity that's developed in our society. And even some of the very wealthiest people in the country, Warren Buffett and other millionaires and billionaires, are saying, you know, this is wrong. We can't continue to run the country this way. And they're saying, I'm happy to be rich. I'm also happy to pay taxes. So please, I should be paying as much taxes as my secretary pays. Don't keep giving me this break.
I know a lot of people don't like to use the term redistribution of wealth. But is that sort of something that you're advocating?
That is part of the American system. It's always been this way, that we have pooled our resources in order to provide things together that we couldn't provide alone. You can't build highway systems by yourself. You have to join with your neighbors and other communities and the people throughout the whole state and the whole country to build the highway system. You can't protect the air and the water and farmland by yourself. You can do your part, but you can't do the whole thing unless everybody is working together to do that. And those are just a couple of examples. And then, you know, unfortunately in life, not everybody finds themselves on an equal footing. And some people become physically ill, some become emotionally ill, some are born with characteristics that compromise their ability to be as productive as everyone else, but they still need the opportunity to be productive and to participate in life in the community. And that's what we do together, is to basically support the development of this safety net, if you will, of programs to ensure that everyone has a place in the community, everyone gets to live a decent quality of life and contribute according to their ability. And so whatever you want to name that, in Massachusetts we call it Commonwealth. That's why we're not the state of Massachusetts, we're the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, because we really buy into this idea from the very beginning when Massachusetts was founded in the 1600s and developed the first state government and on and on and on and on. It was the idea that we all work together, because you never know when it'll be your turn to need help and support from your neighbors in many different ways, including possibly through the government.
All right. Alexis, do you have any?
This is kind of taking a different turn in our conversation. With the advertising and the advertising finances, do you think that there should be regulations on the money spent on that?
Yeah, and you're talking about the $2 billion or so that
yeah.
was just spent. Yeah, please, how sick are we of those commercials, and what do those commercials contribute to the election? Think about what we just went through with the storm Sandy, Hurricane Sandy. Those $2 billion could have been applied to help a lot of people who were in need just in the last week and even until today. Instead, we saw endless parading of meaningless commercials that did not enhance people's understanding either of the candidate or of our system, or motivated by anything other than each candidate trying to trump the other. And it really is a huge waste of money, time, and effort.
Do you think that this election has brought up more mudslinging than there has been in past elections?
Oh, there's always mudslinging in presidential elections. It goes all the way back to the founding of the presidency, so I wouldn't say that we created anything new here. It's intensified with social media, with TV. You know, in the old days it was all done by pamphlets and speeches, and then it was done with newspapers. They actually created this idea of newspapers. Heavens to newspapers. And then we ended up with telegraph, and then we ended up with radio and television, and now the internet, and now social media, so that you can broadcast a message in literally seconds, and within minutes it will spread across the whole state or the whole country or even the world. And those are very, very powerful tools. They can be used well and for good. They can also mess a lot of stuff up.
Would you say that there should be better regulations on what should be allowed in terms of social media and whatnot for elections?
Well, that's a very good question. I have not thought about that. I am an advocate for freedom of expression. I use social media every day. I have a Facebook page. I do an online newsletter. So I use social media extensively. I get very good and positive feedback on it because I don't use it to try to tear anybody else down. I don't use it to spread lies, etc. How do you deal with that? I don't know. I haven't thought about it, but thank you for asking. I will.
I know a lot of other officials have come on, and including Representative Kulik, and said that there should be public financing for elections. Is that something that you would be interested in?
I think if you can come up with a fair and balanced system of public financing that doesn't have built in any advantage or disadvantage for individual candidates, be they incumbents or challengers, then yes, many countries have successfully done this. A few states in the United States have done it. Maine, Arizona, to name two, been very successful, but it has to be carefully done. And the question that passed on the ballot, maybe 10 years ago now, had so many loopholes that eventually it didn't get implemented. Now, in fairness, we could have closed the loopholes, but the people who were opposed to it didn't want to close it so they could use it as an excuse. And the people who were for it were not willing to close the loopholes because they felt it was their system and they wanted to try it exactly as it was put forward.
Well, switching gears a little bit. When we're talking about incumbents and challengers, we come to the main two elections that people are focusing on right now in this state, the presidential election and the senatorial election. Incumbent Barack Obama, incumbent Senator Brown. How would you say those two have been doing, just generally? How have they been doing at their jobs?
Well, Scott Brown, I served with Scott in the Senate, and he was part of a very small number of Republicans, so the minority had very little clout in the Senate. When he went to Washington, he found himself in a very different situation where he could be a swing vote in certain situations. That was not possible in the Massachusetts State Senate because there were so few of them. And I find that he has cast a few votes here and there which were perhaps helpful and sent a signal that he wanted to be helpful in a particular issue area or whatever. But it turned out that most, if not all, of those votes were actually votes where it didn't make a difference to the actual outcome. There was a couple of times when it really did, and he helped influence the shape of a couple of things, and that was to his credit that as a freshman he was basically playing that role. But when push came to shove, most of the time he was loyal to his party and to his ideology, and that's totally appropriate for him to be loyal to his ideology. but it really, a lot of those decisions disappointed people here in the Commonwealth. So, but we'll know in a matter of a couple of hours whether he will serve a full 6-year term or not.
Well, hot off the presses.
Here we go.
This is something slightly unrelated, but also election related. So polling coming in tells us the 3 Massachusetts questions on the ballots are all overwhelmingly supported, at least locally. What are your thoughts on this?
I'm the sponsor in the legislature of the medical marijuana bill as a matter of humanitarian policy to help people who are ill receive some relief if medical marijuana can help them. And so I was thinking that the bill was probably going to pass, the ballot question was going to pass where the bill in the legislature did not pass. I think that there are some things that need to be tightened up in the version on the ballot, and I'll be working to do that, but I'm glad that we're joining 16 other states if this wins tonight. And I have a feeling that we're heading in that direction. With regard to the second question, that's really very, very personal, and everybody gets to make their own decision on it. They don't need to be educated about that. They have their own life experience, they have guidance from their faith, their community of faith, and it's a very difficult issue. I supported it. I think it's a reasonable system, and we'd be the second state in the country if this is adopted. On question 1, that one's kind of weird because they put the question, they got the signatures to put it on the ballot. Then there was negotiation in the legislature with both sides. Both sides agreed. The legislature passed the law, the governor signed the law, they held a press conference and said, we can't take it off the ballot because it's too late, but we did a good job, it's already in law, so don't worry about this question. A couple of weeks ago, out of the blue, some of the proponents of the question, the original question, suddenly said, we want you to vote yes. So I'm going to guess it's going to pass. The problem will now be that there's a law in the books. There'll be a new law. They're in conflict in certain areas, which means there could be some chaos, some confusion among the consumers, and worse, there could be litigation, and the litigation could freeze both.
Is there any sort of built-in committee or something that would make these?
No, there should be a severability clause, which means that if any part of it is found unconstitutional, the rest of the law can still go into effect. But this isn't about constitutionality at this point. I don't believe.
There's no way to reconcile the 2 bills?
Well, there is, but the legislature would have to get involved in the middle of it again, and now you'll have the proponents saying, well, wait a minute, you know, the ballot question passed, that should take precedence over the law. And the legislature will say, but the ballot question is imperfect, and you agreed to what's in the law, so there'll be a big fight.
So does that mean that it just has to start over, or where do they go?
No, we have to get people around the table and sort of say, okay, come on, let's no, we're not going to duke it out. Let's say, let's hope that we can get around the table and have a rational conversation to figure out how to resolve this, because the law and the ballot question both seek to achieve the same thing. It's just there's different details between the two. We should be able to reconcile the differences. It won't be easy, but we should do that.
All right.
So the consumers in the end are the people who need to benefit, and people have to get out of the way here, and so, you know, just work on it.
Before we go to a break, is there anything you'd like to tell the audience?
9 more minutes. If you're in your car, if you're listening online, whatever, you got 9 more minutes. Please vote. Please vote. And win or lose, it's only one election. There's always another election around the corner.
Well, thank you for coming on,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Rosenberg.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
What's more